Chapter 1, The List. You must not see yourself as being alone. On the contrary, now you are more accompanied than ever before, because our Lord is always with those who suffer. Talk to Him. Trust Him in all your sufferings. Tell Him about your doubts and abandon yourself entirely into His hands. From an undated letter to Sister Refugio during the religious persecution in Mexico. No one dared to venture outside the locked gates of their homes. Everyone was in shock, terrified. People spoke in hushed whispers. Birds stopped singing as if they too were reeling in disbelief and horror at what was happening in their beautiful city of Guadalajara, once so alive with laughter, music, and rich Mexican culture. The Cristero uprising had come to Guadalajara. War changed everything. It is difficult to say which is worse, fear of the unknown or fear of the known. The stress and fear that comes with the threat of war or the war itself, with the uncertainties of day-to-day living during wartime. Not knowing is acutely successful. Not knowing is acutely stressful. The unanswered questions remain curled up like a tight ball in the pit of the stomach. How close to home will the battles be? Will we have enough provisions to get by? General Jesus Maria Ferreira, chief of the military zone of the state of Jalisco, Mexico, only 6 weeks earlier had ordered the reconcentration of all persons living in the surrounding Los Altos hills. He drove these rural people out of their homes and took over their ranches and everything in them for the federal soldiers to pillage. They were forced to travel to the plazas of selected cities, arriving no later than the first week of May, 1927. Guadalajara's plaza was among the plazas selected. To assess the extent of the damage that General Ferreira caused, one had only to open the front door and walk a few steps onto the street. Driven from their ranches, groups of displaced people had entered the city, pushed forward by the sheer numbers moving together toward their destination. More and more people crowded into the plaza and the outlying avenues. An exhausted silence accompanied their forced trek over the hills to Guadalajara. Thousands had already arrived, and thousands more were on their way. Mexican families opened their doors to these uprooted men, women, and children. They shared their homes and their sustenance, but there was not enough housing for the displaced persons swarming into the city, nor enough food or sufficient sanitation to meet their needs, causing a stench to settle upon their beautiful city. As the plaza clock struck 12, safe within the locked gates of one of the homes, a woman knelt on a tiled patio floor, hands clasped and head bowed. Needing to make her decision right away, she had discreetly left the others inside the house to be alone with her thoughts. When she looked up, her furrowed forehead and tightly drawn lips belied her gentle spirit. She couldn't take her eyes off the atrocities she had seen and heard about, especially the story of the 3,000 faith-filled Mexican women who had taken their stand on the Plaza of Santa Familia Church in the suburb of Mexico City. These heroines had formed a human barrier in front of the church to protest the stop the forced removal of their priests. When mounted police arrived at the church, they sprayed fire hoses at full force into the crowd of women and galloped into the throng, trampling many of these valiant heroines. 5,000 more fearless Mexican women soon arrived to form a new, larger human barrier. Many of these women were also trampled and bludgeoned. The Franciscan sisters from San Martin de Bolaños were ambushed by soldiers and carried away on horseback. They were returned a month later and refused to speak to anyone about their ordeal. Her recent experiences came unbidden into her mind. The times she and other Carmelite sisters were forced to make quick escapes over rooftops or had been walled in to protect themselves from the soldiers. Her eyes expressed inner fear and indecision because her life and the lives of 55 Carmelite sisters in her fledgling community were in imminent danger. Even now, the federal soldiers were combing the city searching for them, and her options had finally run out. With her hands covering her face, she breathed deeply and waited expectantly for an answer to her prayers. Lord, what do you want us to do? She knew the government was also searching for her family, the wealthy de la Peñas, and other families of the upper class. The government planned to strip them of their inheritances and businesses, in fact, of all their money, whatever they could acquire, to fuel their war against Catholics in the state of Jalisco, Mexico, in the early 1920s. What is our next step? Kneeling on the tiled patio, Mother Luisita came to understand what she must do next. Courage arose within her. With her determined determination, advocated by St. Teresa of Avila, Mother Luisita stood up, squared her shoulders, and walked purposefully back to the house. She had come to her decision. I must escape. My name is on the list.